This is the Pimax Dream Air, and on paper it has everything you'd want. Eye tracking, Sony Micro OLED, 4K per eye at 90Hz, built-in audio and motorized IPD, all in a sub 200 gram package. But specs have never really been Pimax's problem. Execution has, so let's see if this holds up in practice with both the good and the bad. Full transparency as always, Pimax did send me this, but they're seeing this at the same time you are, and this is not a sponsored video. Starting with design, this is where Pimax finally changes direction. It's not perfect as you'll see later on, but it does get a whole damn lot right. Now, Pimax headsets have always been known to be pretty huge, so even comparing the Dream Air with the Crystal Super, which is one of their smaller headsets, the difference is significant. Especially when you realize that it's using the same displays and lenses as the Super Micro OLED, but we'll talk about that in a minute. In terms of weight, this is a 170 gram headset, and for reference, my iPhone weighs 233 grams. This feels incredibly lightweight on my face, but I'll talk more about that in the comfort section. Now, in terms of build quality, it's an all-plastic housing. It's not gonna blow your mind or anything, but it seems decent and well built overall. One thing I really appreciate here is how modular it actually is. You can fully detach the head strap, which opens the door for both official and third-party future upgrades. And Pimax have already posted a blog article on some of the existing options. Now, one thing to note is that the strap and the facial interface are not the final versions. Pimax are shipping this headset with these right now and will send users the final versions for free when they're ready. I'm not a super big fan of this approach because this is a really damn expensive headset, so shipping it with unfinished components is not ideal, but hopefully it won't take them another year before these two last bits are finalized. I'm gonna talk more about these in the next section when we get to the comfort, but one last thing to be aware of in terms of the build quality is that the current facial interface is only being held in place by one small magnet in the middle, which is not nearly strong enough. So while it will never move while you wear it, it is very wobbly and can be a bit annoying when you're putting it on or taking it off. Okay, so keeping in mind that those components are not final, let's talk about comfort. And due to the Dream Air being so lightweight and small, the current facial interface is quite decent. It distributes pressure evenly and there's no noticeable light leaking inside the headset. That being said, I do wish it was a bit softer and maybe spread over a larger surface, but I believe this is the direction Pimax is heading with the final version of the interface. When it comes to the head strap, this is what they call the 2D strap, and it connects straight into the audio stem, so again I expect many other options to pop up on the market. But at the moment it does the job, though there is a very sharp corner on the strap that digs into the top of my ear when I wear it too low. One last thing I'll mention in terms of comfort is that Pimax made a great decision regarding the cable and then they kind of ruined it. So they went with a split cable, one side on each of the stems of the Dream Air. This helps immensely with balance, but for some reason decided to put the small box that connects the two cables right on the back of the user's neck. I would have really loved for this to be lower, both for comfort and because this tiny box tends to get very warm. Not red hot by any means, but you do feel it and it just feels like a weird oversight worth being aware of. Now, the Dream Air did come with these two cable ties, which you could use to secure the whole thing a bit higher, but yeah, still not ideal. And since this also ties directly into comfort, while I don't personally wear glasses, some of you do, and there are prescription lens inserts available that magnetically attach to the lenses. Just thought it might be useful to know. So overall, in terms of comfort, it's okay, but it feels like one revision away from being great. Now, just before we get into the visuals, let's quickly go over binocular overlap and field of view. And as far as eye comfort goes, the Dream Air is unlike anything I've ever tried, despite me not being sensitive to binocular overlap. It just feels effortless, there's no eye strain at all, and I don't feel weird after taking it off. And when you look at the numbers, it actually makes sense it feels that way. Using Test HMD, I got a field of view of 110 horizontal and 90 vertical. And for binocular overlap, I tested it in FOV using default Pimax Play FOV settings and got a bit over 85%. This will be different for everyone, but as I've mentioned earlier, the eye comfort is the best I've ever experienced, and for reference, I have an IPD of 67. But none of that matters if the visual sucks, so let's go over the lenses and the displays. The Dream Air uses the exact same Sony 4K Micro OLED displays and the same concave pancake lenses found in the Crystal Super Micro OLED. And with two exceptions, the Dream Air has the same great characteristics that I talked about in my Super Micro OLED review. The lenses are absolutely stunning, great edge-to-edge clarity, and most importantly, very little glare, which usually plagues Micro OLED headsets pretty badly, but not here. Switching over to the Sony displays, these are truly top-notch. And you'd expect deep blacks and rich colors in a micro OLED headset, but what is surprising is the level of brightness these can put out. Obviously, the lenses play a big role here as well, but man, this is so much better than the dim displays used in something like the Big Screen Beyond 2, it's not even in the same league. But I did mention two exceptions compared to the Crystal Super, and these are field of view, which we've already discussed, and resolution. Now again, these are the exact same displays, but they actually render less pixels than the Super Micro OLED, likely simply due to the slightly lower field of view. So we're getting 5188 by 4168 in SteamVR as opposed to 5640 by 5356 per eye on the Crystal Super Micro OLED. For reference, that's roughly 30% less pixels, and man, can you feel that in terms of performance. Visually, aside from the FOV, I can't really tell much of a difference, and both of them look stunning. I can't see any distortion, there's no Mura, very little ghosting, and simply put, this is the most beautiful looking headset I've ever tried, on par only with the Crystal Super since they share a lot of DNA. And this is the kind of clarity where you stop noticing the headset and just drool at how beautiful everything looks. Quick tip for any VR sim racers out there, you've gotta drive the Lamborghini Veneno Roadster on the Nordschleife at sunset. Absolutely incredible experience. Okay, let's talk audio, both output and the microphone. The side stems include speakers, and this was one area where I was already prepared for disaster. But surprisingly, these tiny speakers sound great. Of course, there's not gonna be insane volume or bass in them, but they are plenty loud and have good clarity. They're very comparable to the ones on the Quest 3, for example, though maybe a bit less bass but better clarity. I'd still love to grab the upgraded DMAS speakers whenever those come out, but I'm surprisingly okay with these until then. When it comes to the microphone, it's a definite step up for Pimax, but still not even close to the studio quality of the Beyond 2. Here's a quick comparison. This is a microphone test of the Pimax Dream Air, and yeah, this is kind of how it sounds. Let me know what you think in the comments. And this is what the microphone on the Big Screen Beyond 2 sounds like, and I think the difference is pretty obvious because this is a top-notch microphone. Now here's where things get really interesting, because this might actually be the most practical high-end headset I've ever tested. Let's talk performance, because as I've mentioned a few moments ago, this offers considerable gains over its Crystal Super big brother. Now my main PC runs a 5090, so needless to say, I can run this at 100% in any game on pretty much max settings. But with Nvidia set to raise the price from an insane $3,000 to an absolutely out of their minds $5K, ain't nobody buying a 5090 anytime soon. So I decided to also test it on my old PC, which my wife now mainly uses to play League of Legends. That's a 5800X CPU with an RTX 3070 and 32 gigs of RAM, so as mid-range as it gets, maybe even slightly lower. I was entirely expecting this to be a stutter fest, and as you'd imagine, 100% resolution is out of the question, right? Yeah, that's what I thought too. But this is where the magic of eye tracking comes into play. Because believe it or not, I was able to run this at full resolution. Granted, this was with quad views and FSR unbalanced, or even performance mode in some games, but hey, it worked and it looked great. Now, do I recommend using this with a PC that costs less than half what the headset does? Not really if you want to take full advantage of it. But I wanted to talk about both extremes to show that if you're running a 4070, 4080, 5070 or above, you'll still get a great deal of value out of the Dream Air. At this point, you'd think this is an easy recommendation, but there are a few things you need to know first, so let's talk about negatives. And I briefly mentioned some of these already, but I want to go over everything that's not that great about the Dream Air. To kick things off, I've already said this, but that wire connection box that sits on the back of your head gets hot, and I'm genuinely not sure how they didn't notice this or why they didn't fix it. It's not a deal breaker, but it takes away from what could have been flawless execution. The headset itself also gets pretty warm on the outside, but thankfully that heat never seems to reach my eyes like it does with the Beyond 2, so at least there's that. Next negative, which hopefully gets solved soon, are the facial interface and the current head strap. Again, they're not massively bad or anything, but for the price tag this headset carries, Pimax should have shipped the final version of both with it. And I get it, they didn't want to keep customers waiting even longer, but I just feel they could have planned ahead better to have everything ready at the time of shipping. Another thing I wish it had is pass-through. I mean, I understand it uses lighthouse tracking, but even just two black and white cameras would have been better than nothing. This will probably be less of an issue when they come out with their Halo-style strap that you can just raise up, but right now it's a hassle taking it off every time I want to see something in the real world. Finally, and this is stupid but it really annoys me, where the heck is the light bar on the front of the headset? It's in all of the marketing, including in Pimax Play itself, but not on the actual product. Come on, Pimax. Okay, so we've got a headset with incredible specs, good comfort that is likely to get even better soon, fantastic performance and crisp visuals, but who is it for and is it worth the roughly $2,000 price tag? Well, for the first time ever when it comes to a Pimax headset, I can confidently say that this is more than just a product for flight and racing sim enthusiasts. It's lightweight, offers incredible visuals, and pretty much every high-end feature you could possibly ask for. This is without a doubt the best headset Pimax has ever produced, and that's kind of a big deal. By the way, you can get a small discount if you use my link below, but no pressure, totally your call. For any questions, ask away in the comments, and here are 2 other videos you might want to watch next. I'll catch you soon. Cheers, guys.